Hello and welcome back to the Surfline East Coast podcast. I am lead forecaster Korte, and I'm joined here in our Outer Banks, North Carolina office with forecaster Rob Mitstifer. Got a lot of weather impacting the eastern U.S., including us here. How is that going to impact our surf, and what exactly is going on for us right now?
Yeah, Kurt, we really, as meteorologists here in our Outer Banks office, we really get excited about the weather. Obviously, we're focused on surf a lot of our day as forecasters, but we do have quite a bit of weather going on up and down the East Coast, really from the Gulf Coast through New England. So starting north, we're seeing a lot of snow up in New England today, actually some winter storm warnings and watches through Maine and upstate New York. Moving a little bit further south, a lot of flood advisories through the mid-Atlantic because, we're looking at a lot of rain over the next 12 to 24 hours. And then moving a little bit closer to home, currently we're actually under a tornado watch here in Dare County, North Carolina. So we'll see how that plays out through the rest of the day. And really just a lot of weather going on as this frontal system pushes through the East Coast.
Yeah, so it's interesting, a lot of times here on the East Coast, you need that weather to produce our waves. If I was going to tell you we had a significant event and it was happening on February 5th or 6th or whatever heck today is, I would expect there to be a lot more snow involved than there is. But that being said, let's get into the surf part. And you've been on the shift down in the southern part of the East Coast and the Gulf Coast. So give us a rundown. How's the Gulf looking today? What's Florida and the Southeast looking like here the next few days?
Yeah, absolutely. So starting off, really most of the surf today has been focused in the Gulf. So that's West Florida seeing a little bit of sideshore southerly wind swell. The Panhandle actually is pretty solid right now. A lot of mixed direction south and west wind swell. Local winds really didn't cooperate too well for there because, behind this front we're seeing a lot of westerly winds as opposed to northerly winds. And we'll
excellent foreshadowing there, Rob.
Yeah, we'll talk about what that means for the rest of the East Coast once that front propagates forward over the next couple of days. But yeah, Panhandle hasn't really seen good surf today. A lot of size. West Florida has seen a little bit of size. Even the east coast of Florida saw a little bit of southerly wind swell, which, that's not really their bread and butter type of event, but there's a little bit of surf out there. South Florida surfers. I was actually chatting with one of our Florida guys, John Warren, who forecasts for the West Coast, but he lives in Florida, and he gets pretty excited about these little wind swell events because it means he can surf right near his backyard. So
and we always joke about him. He calls it fun chop, but yeah, John's pretty classic. And this is a very interesting scenario for Florida. If you think about the orientation of the coastline and the way these winds are setting up, it's kind of like a difficult thing actually for them to get like a decent south wind swell or actually more like southeast wind swell. But as you head further north up the coast, obviously we're a little bit more exposed to the strongest winds. And as we head into the southeast region, what are we seeing as we head into Friday and the weekend?
Yeah, southeast is going to see a pretty solid shot of south swell tomorrow, Friday. The dicey thing we're seeing here is that winds behind this front are not looking great. A lot of the southeast coastline actually faces southeast. Funny that works out. Of course, there's more south-facing spots.
Mind blown.
Some more east-facing spots. And you're really going to want to target those east-facing spots for best conditions tomorrow, Friday. And, once we see that front move off, looks like it's going to push through tonight into early tomorrow. And the winds are going to go southwest behind that front, eventually trend a bit more west-southwest. So keep an eye on key spots in southern North Carolina tomorrow afternoon for pretty solid surf and improving conditions. That being said, spots like the Crystal Coast and a lot of South Carolina just isn't looking that good because of that post-frontal wind direction, just not really cooperating for us. But we will have the size. So, it's better than nothing. But this isn't really a textbook event for the Southeast.
Gotcha. So Mark Willis, if you're listening, you're going to want to target somewhere between, say, the Carolina Beach, Curry Beach, Wrightsville Beach area. You head further north from there, you're going to end up getting a little more sideshore texture and conditions. And next, most importantly, maybe I would say, what about the Outer Banks? What are we seeing here? I know you've looked at it because we've been chatting about it in the office.
Yeah, even when we're not on the forecast shift for the Outer Banks, we're always looking because we live here. We're surfers, so yeah, I'm planning on surfing.
I think I call what I do surfing. Yeah, that's about right.
Wiggling,
yeah,
attempting, paddling, a lot of paddling. But
there will be a lot of paddling.
Speaking of a lot of paddling,
South swells.
South swells are really tricky here because if you look at the geography and the orientation of the Outer Banks, a lot of the Outer Banks, especially where we're located here in the northern Outer Banks, really doesn't pick up the south direction very well. So we rely on kind of the spread of swell as it moves around Hatteras Island. We actually face more east-northeast here. And so if you're looking straight off the beach, we're kind of facing a little bit more north than east, which really doesn't allow us to pick up south swells too well. But that being said, this one looks really strong. Hatteras Island's going to be overhead, well overhead tomorrow. Pretty dicey with the strength of those southwest trending west-southwest winds. So there should be some windows of surf on Hatteras Island tomorrow. If you're kind of a charger, it's going to be pretty solid and drifty and a lot of paddling to contend with. Moving up to the northern Outer Banks and even Virginia Beach, surf gets a little bit more manageable overall, and it should be reasonably fun here tomorrow. So I'm kind of excited about that. Nothing too big, but this does look like one of the better south swells we've seen in, I don't know, a few months.
Yeah, and these are actually kind of selective too, we found, with the sandbars shifting the way they do. And we have a lot of shoals off our coast here, and kind of how things refract in can really impact, what spots see the best swell or most size. And then also we have that higher tide in the morning, which can also impact, some of our sandbars a little further off the beach compared to others. So kind of an interesting scenario, and really a challenging from a forecaster perspective, trying to figure out exactly how much of that's going to make its way back in here, but then also in Virginia Beach. There's kind of a fine line of whether it's too south to really get in, or whether there's enough of that easterly component that allows it to be pretty good. And it does look like more manageable conditions, as you said, up here because of the wind direction, and because the size doesn't look as big as what we're seeing down on Hatteras Island. So pretty interesting scenario here. Should be some fun waves, and even some leftover as we head into the weekend as well. For details on that, check out Tim Kent's forecast here. He'll be updating a little bit later this afternoon, and the video forecast where we're going to dive into kind of some of our wave height expectations here over the next couple of days. Heading further up into the mid-Atlantic region, looks like this is going to be one of the standouts during this swell, but there is going to be kind of an interesting scenario with our winds. So in the morning, it looks like kind of some side shore winds, especially down in southern New Jersey, which obviously, New Jersey, your home state, and obviously you know it pretty well. I don't know why I'm sitting here telling you about it.
So Kurt, you're talking about Friday, correct?
I'm talking about Friday, sorry, yes, for the Mid-Atlantic. Really eye in the afternoon. If I'm looking at a time to target, if I'm in the Mid-Atlantic, and that's pretty much, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, I'm looking at that afternoon time frame. It's when our winds look like they're going to come around a little more. Swell is going to fill in and definitely be there. We have a low and incoming tide through the afternoon. So kind of a bunch of the variables kind of coming together for one of those pretty good south swells, which, there's certain areas up there that really enjoy that.
Yeah, man, if I had a window to maybe take off work or cut out of school a little bit early, Friday afternoon, evening, that could get pretty darn good. And, like we were mentioning, this swell's going to have some legs to it. So Saturday morning looks like you definitely want to keep an eye on that. And for the latest on that, definitely check out that premium analysis that Tim is dialing in back in the office back there.
That's right. We got him locked down in there, and we're not going to let him out until he's done. So when you said that the swell had legs, why is this swell different than some of the one hitters that we kind of see from time to time?
Great question. All right. So the main, one of the really standout factors of this swell is really the length of the fetch. And that comes down to the combination of where this low developed. So it developed relatively far south over the Mississippi Valley, that general region, and how that interacts with the relatively strong Atlantic high pressure we have offshore. So remember, to get wind, we need a pressure gradient, and that's the difference between low and high pressure. So when we have one of these lows interacting with strong high pressure over the Atlantic, we get wind. And that fetch area, which is basically our wind area that we're focusing on, that's going to be developing swell, is going to extend basically down to the Bahamas. And when we have a south wind that's extending all the way from basically the Bahamas through New England, that's a lot of swell that's going to be developed. And, of course, Friday for a lot of areas, that's going to be the peak of the swell. But because of that lengthy fetch, there's still going to be a lot of waves left over on Saturday. So, it's a tough call whether, depending on your location, whether Friday or Saturday will actually be better. Friday will have the size, but Saturday could have a little bit better conditions depending on where you are. So yeah, that's a really neat factor. I was actually just looking back at one swell event back in, this is pretty long ago now, back in 2010, early November. One of my first significant south swells that I remember in New Jersey. I remember pulling up to this one street. I'll keep that spot nameless, but I remember seeing Sam Hammer pulling into some right barrels, and I was frothing. I think it was 16 at the time, and it was overhead, pumping, New Jersey, south swell.
I could probably go back and find my forecast from that. I save all those things somewhere. That's kind of funny.
Anyway.
Yeah. So heading even further north, an interesting location, I feel like, is kind of the Long Island through Rhode Island situation. obviously no shortage of swell is going to fill in tomorrow, and even into Saturday there'll be plenty of waves. But the wind direction, especially tomorrow, we're going to have kind of that warm front that's going to extend almost kind of right through that zone there. And whether that's a little further north or a little further south, there could possibly be a window of some decent winds during the morning. Going to want to stay tuned to our reports. Obviously, we update those twice a day, and even more when the conditions warrant. I expect tomorrow would probably be one of those days where we kind of update things as conditions change through the day, and it does look like things are going to be a little bit in flux there. But no shortage of swell for Long Island and even into Rhode Island. Best bet out of that zone, probably looking like Rhode Island on Saturday. Once this all kind of clears out, you get those west-northwest winds. Obviously, those a little more side shore for Long Island, but there are some spots that can handle it if you know where to go in that zone. And then finally, I guess another interesting zone is basically Cape Cod up through the Gulf of Maine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing we watch with these type of south swells, obviously, bringing up geography again, Cape Cod can really shadow those southern Maine and New Hampshire, and even the spots that are around Boston. Some of those beach breaks there, those spots get really shadowed on a straight south swell. So we deal with a similar thing that we deal with here in the northern Outer Banks, where there's a couple of boxes we have to check whether there's going to be swell getting in there. So what's the swell period? What's the swell direction? How strong is this swell? But like I mentioned, this fetch is going to be pretty massive, pretty strong, so there's definitely going to be waves filtering in up there as well.
Yeah, so stay tuned to, again, Tim's forecast as he will be dialing things down for Rhode Island, Cape Cod, and also New Hampshire and Maine here over the next couple of days, or actually the next couple of hours. Rob, you mentioned that you wanted to quiz me on a couple things, and I'm kind of interested on where this is going to go. So if you're still with us right now, here's Rob asking me some lightning round questions.
Yeah, so we got a little bit of a lightning round going on just to kind of summarize what we're going on here. So try to keep these answers kind of short, but if you have to elaborate, that's okay too.
You know me, I'm very talkative.
So as briefly as you can. So we mentioned there's been a lot of weekend swells lately for the East Coast. Is this one going to be better, worse, the same as the past swells? What do you think?
Well, I was in the Caribbean during the last swell, so I don't have a good answer for that one.
Ooh,
so for me personally, probably not as good. I think the fact that there's going to be several days of waves, I would chalk this one up as a pretty good one.
Yeah. Okay. How about where's going to be the biggest surf on the East Coast during this event?
Biggest surf, I would say probably Eastern Long Island. But conditions for most of the spots there are not going to cooperate. The best combination of size and conditions, I would say Northern New Jersey.
Okay, nice. How about this? On average, across the East Coast, more rights or more lefts?
On average, across the East Coast?
On this swell.
On this swell? Oh, rights.
Yeah. Okay. Good. See,
come on.
What about on this swell? More A-frame peaks or long, drawn-out lines?
Oh, ropey lines. Yeah, just kegging. I can think of so many spots I'd like to be.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. How about this one? Who's going to get the wave of the swell?
I mean, probably nobody sitting in this room. I can tell you that.
That's true.
Gosh, I would have to think somebody from Jersey. I mean, that group of guys up there. It's got to be one of them.
Like the Gleasons, the Hammers, the Gesslers. But yeah, and this last one. What are you personally most excited about during this swell?
I was actually looking at some water temperature predictions, and it looked like it's going to be in the low 60s down on Hatteras Island on Saturday morning. So that's pretty exciting for me. But I don't know. I guess everybody getting waves. I feel like the southeast a lot of times kind of gets the shaft on some stuff. But there's going to be surf down there. Gulf surfers are getting some waves, and then we've had warm weather for the past 4 or 5 days. So it's nothing to shake a stick at.
Great. I couldn't agree more. Actually, one unique tidbit I'll throw in here is that West Florida is actually looking better than East Florida on this event. So that doesn't happen all the time.
Wow. Throw that one to Mike Watson, why don't you?
Yeah. So I think with that, we can wrap this up, huh, Kurt?
Yeah. Again, I am lead forecaster Kurt Korte, and I'm here with Rob Mitstifer on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. If you finished up here, send us an email. Let us know what you think. ecforecasters@surfline.com. We're going to be doing more podcasts here in the future, so we'd love to hear your feedback and what you'd like to hear, whether you'd like to have me just shut my mouth and let Rob talk or whatever the case may be. Either way, get some waves the next couple of days. Have a great weekend.